I'm named for a New York City fireman. I'm wearing my grandfather's ring here. Um, so I grew up in Brooklyn, watched the erection of the World Trade Center walking to high school, was in it numerous times. So my strongest initial and lasting reaction to 9/11, Kim, relief. It wasn't nuclear, knowing as
Mm.
I do firsthand the corruption is the Department of Energy, the custodian of America's nuclear stockpile. So after 9/11, I said, all right, you prevailed 8 times. Why? Why you have to prevail 8 times? Because the system to protect me is broken. While the DOE singled me, the Department of Energy singled me out for reprisal, the Merits Protection Board and another tiny agency called the U.S. Office of Special Counsel, they failed to do their job to protect me, but they didn't single me out. Their failure is generic. And that's why we have a 9/11, because of their failure. So your mission, Engineer Carson, should you choose to do it, is to expose and in their law breaking. Because I can't tell other, I'm an engineer. I'm supposed to blow whistles, and I have to tell other engineers, look the other way if you can live with yourself. I can't live with myself having to say that. I got to try to change it.
Hmm.
Still on my feet, Kim. I don't want to be, life's been good to me, but I have an important mission. So don't take Joe Carson out of the equation. Just consider the mission, consider the message. I've made the case, and I'm up against the phalanx of government attorneys who consider it their sworn duty to prevent any resolution of my concern to protect their clients, no matter how many people die. And by legal ethics, I've talked to the bar associations. The bar associations said, yeah, that's right. That's what they should be doing. What? What? Am I making
Yeah. So these
my
are the
hands on fire,
attorneys,
even though I think I'm a
right?
pretty rational person?
So the Office of Special Counsel is these are the attorneys, and they represent who?
Well, the Office of Special Counsel, so to go back to this, I'm engineering. Rube Goldberg, I'm showing my age, these very complex, crazy systems. So I mentioned the Pendleton Act of 1883, which created what is now the Federal Civil Service. The biggest single change in the law between 1883 and 2024 is the Civil Service Reform Act of 1978. And that was when President Jimmy Carter was president, that was running for president in 76. That was a big part of his platform to reform the federal civil service. Why? In a part, Watergate and President Nixon. He really used federal agencies to punish his enemies and reward his friends. They had become quite politicized. So Jimmy Carter and others wanted to make the federal civil service more, merit-based, essentially.
Hmm.
So I mentioned these merit principles. It was a Civil Service Reform Act that codified the merit principles in law. It was a Civil Service Reform Act that created what is now the Merits Protection Board. So the Merits Protection Board was created in 1979. There was a predecessor agency, the Civil Service Commission, but the Civil Service Reform Act of 1978 split the Civil Service Commission up into various entities. So one of the issues that Congress addressed in making the Civil Service Reform Act is, okay, we're going to try to protect federal agency employees from whistleblower reprisal and cronyism and other improper, unlawful agency employment practices. How are we going to do it? Are we going to trust the agencies to police themselves? No. In part because we have over 300 federal agencies, or 200. We don't want every agency to have its own system, and we don't trust agencies to police themselves. So we're going to create these other two auxiliary agencies, the Merits Protection Board and the Office of Special Counsel, which are going to have agency-wide jurisdiction. The Office of Special Counsel is going to be tasked to protect, positively tasked to protect federal employees from reprisal. And the Merits Protection Board is going to be tasked to adjudicate claims of reprisal and to make the report. Is this whole system working or not? So we have what I describe as a three-legged stool, even though it's not an exact analogy because the roles are not identical, they're complementary. Federal agency heads are charged to prevent reprisal in their agencies. The Office of Special Counsel is charged to protect federal agency employees from reprisal. The Merits Protection Board is charged to evaluate whether the Office of Special Counsel and the agency heads are doing their jobs and are federal employees adequately protected from reprisal. I'm saying this kind of
Right,
quickly,
right.
but can you see this kind of like a football play with a multiple? This is like a trick play when different agencies doing complementary duties. A lot of chance for fumbles, and that's what we have here.
Sure.
We have systems that should be working together. They're all like siloed.
Right. So it sounded like all three of those, the department heads, the special counsel and the Merit System Protection Board are supposed to be protecting the employees
Right.
who come to the and say, "Hey, there's a problem, and we need to
Yeah.
correct this problem." And
Right.
this is really how we hope government would function. I mean, if we're
Right.
spending all these tax dollars on these departments and they're developing all these various things, or they're overseeing certain things, we want efficiency, and we also want things to work the way they're supposed to work, and we want those things. So we want people who are being paid by tax dollars
Mhm.
to speak up and to say we can improve systems, we can
Right.
be efficient, we can improve safety. There's like all these various things that we hope that people would speak up and do. And so when they go to their department heads, or we hope that people are being heard so that things can be corrected, that we just don't end up with this kind of
Mhm.
sloth of a government, right? That just continues to eat resources, spend tax dollars, and nothing gets accomplished. And then you've got these other agencies that are set up to protect, to over it's supposed to be oversight, but you're saying
Right.
that these agencies are not actually protecting the employees. They're instead protecting who?
Okay.
The contractors, the money
Well,
making.
this is where, so you've been hearing me talk about engineering ethics, okay? And I'm as an engineer, I can be in a situation where I'm a mandated reporter, regardless of workplace retribution, and when necessary to protect public health and safety and doing my job.
Right.
Attorneys are mandated non-reporters. Their job is to protect their client. That's what
Right.
legal
But
ethics
who's their
says to do.
client, I guess, is what I'm trying to get to. So their client is,
The Fed, their employing agency.
and the employing agency says, and we've got all these contractors. So they're protecting not the employees, but instead their contractors and themselves.
Well, their clients, what they
Their
consider their client, their agency. So if I'm a whistleblower, that's saying the agency's doing something wrong, the attorney's going to say, no, I'm a hired gun. My client
Yeah.
is never wrong, and I will do whatever I can get away with to prevent any determination of fault on the part of my client.
So yeah, okay, so I get it. So basically, it's like an HR department at a big corporation. I mean, an HR, if an employee comes to the HR department and says, "My boss is doing X, Y," the
Yeah.
president of the company, the CEO is doing XYZ bad thing. The HR department tends to protect the boss at all costs, because that's the person who's bringing in the money. That's the money maker, the rainmaker for the company. And so they're thinking, okay, then they meet together and they say, well, we've got an employee who made a complaint. How can we legally get rid of them? What can we do
But
to try to get rid of them in some way, or to silence them in some way? I mean, a
right.
lot of times these HR departments that are supposed to be protecting the little guy really are just protecting the big guy. And it sounds like that's what these two organizations, the Merit System Protection Board and the Office of Special Counsel, are really just protecting the big guns,
Well,
literally.
it's a little bit different. Okay, so um, if you look, professions in America are significantly self-regulating, and we're trying to make
Mhm.
a virtue of a necessity. Who else can regulate a brain surgeon but a brain surgeon, if you will,
Right,
right?
right.
So my profession of engineering is significantly self-regulating, as is the legal profession. Okay,
Sure.
so you have a tension. Professions exist for two uh, fundamental purposes that are in tension. One, to protect the interest, advance the interest of its members. Two, to advance the common good by advancing the trustworthy practices of the given profession. There's a tension. There can be a tension between those two missions. Okay. The
Mhm.
legal profession, if you look at the entities that license attorneys in America, they have rules of professional conduct for the attorneys. Those rules are basically the model rules promulgated by the American Bar Association. All right. The American Bar Association's model rules do not address the scenario of a government of an attorney who works for an agency, a government agency, when that attorney is specifically tasked to implement specific laws. Legal ethics address the scenario of attorney as an advocate for the client, as a counsel to the client, or a public
Yeah.
citizen. They do not address the scenario of you're an attorney and you're the actual doer of a law. So the vast majority of employees of both the Office of Special Counsel and the Merits Protection Board are attorneys. Who's
Yeah.
their client? Their employing agency. What do legal ethics say to do? Protect my client. Okay,
Got
that's
it.
what I'm trying to be fair to them. That's what
Well,
their
but
rules
so
say
I
to
mean,
do.
but that is just like the HR department. I mean, the person who's running the HR department is hired by the CEO, who they have to
I agree,
protect.
but the HR
It's a
department can't
similar
point
thing.
to I'm an attorney. Here's my rules of professional conduct as a
Sure.
legal
Okay.
duty.
Right. 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 Yeah. So they're just right. Okay. So
And the
it's not
HR
like,
department is getting its steers from the attorneys ultimately.
yeah,
Okay,
okay.
so
But
they're
these
working for
attorneys
laws,
are right. So there's almost a conflict just in the code of being an attorney.
right?
That is where the
For
conflict
the
lies.
gov, if you're a, right, it's a lacuna, an unaddressed scenario.
Yeah.
So Kathy Harris, she's the head of the Merits Protection Board. She's charged to implement the laws, but the Merits Protection Board is also her client. And her stonewalling to my whistleblower disclosure is consistent with her actions as an attorney to protect her client.
So then how is that her fault?
We have a country that's, because it impacts the merits of the protections, it impacts the whistleblowers are not being protected, and that impacts public health, safety, welfare.
So it sounds to me, right? I mean, of course, we want the whistleblowers protect. We want people to blow the whistle if
Okay,
that's what needs to happen, of
right.
course, because yeah, then especially in the nuclear
Yes,
weapons,
one would hope
especially
so.
when it comes to nuclear weapons, right?
And
So I mean,
nuclear
we
power,
want,
yeah, nuclear power in
yeah, we
general,
want
yes.
it. Sure, we want it in every agency, of course, but especially when it comes to the damn nukes. So so it sounds to me like they almost need to set up, I mean, this isn't going to go over well with a lot of people who want less government, but it sounds to me almost like there needs to be another government agency that is tasked with just protecting the
Well,
whistleblowers, not the client. They don't work for any of the departments. They are literally just there as an I mean, there are advocacy groups. I'm sure you've been working with them
mhm.
that are separate from the government. But right, how do we protect the whistleblowers if the
Well,
people who are
okay, so
tasked with protecting the whistleblowers are actually protecting their clients because that's what their code of
we
ethics
have to
say.
modify legal ethics, and in fact, I think they have been,
Yeah.
because there's another tiny agency in the Federal Civil Services, the Office of Government Ethics, which has issued a regulation. If you're an employee, you shall blow whistles. It doesn't say except if you're an attorney. So as I see it, the president, the head of the executive branch, via this Office of Government Ethics regulation, has basically waived aspects of attorney-client privilege, so that Kathy Harris should be saying, oh, yes, by legal ethics, if I work in the private sector, I should be protecting my client, but I'm working for the government. I have a duty to blow whistles. That part of my mandated non-reporter, if you so to speak, has been waived by my client, the president. But when I ask attorneys about it, they say, well, that's a good point, but I never get an answer. We have to look at government attorneys when you're representing the agency against the whistleblower. How about, instead of a win for the agency, you want to get to the truth of the matter? These they're open about it, Kim. I will do whatever I can get away with to protect my client. I'm an attorney. I'm a hired gun. Got it? You're an engineer. I got it. You're trying to blow, your sworn duty to protect others, my sworn duty to protect my client. Here we are. Except we're talking about nuclear weapons. Okay? Not the
Yeah.
deep fat fryer.
Right.
Can I, so these are big stakes. But can you see where we're kind of there's a fundamental tension, and the cause is legal ethics, that these attorneys feel they're justified in just protecting their client regardless of what happens to the public.
Yeah.
So we have
Right.
to
So they're
identify that as the issue. Then we can, you have to identify, we have an issue, then we can address it, as opposed to you go to a doctor and we don't diagnose properly, not going to prescribe properly.
right. Right. Um okay, so what is Stop Stonewalling MSPB?
Okay, that's my website. So Kathy Harris, as an attorney, she's stonewalling my whistleblower disclosure, just similar to what the attorneys who represented pedophile priests stonewalled the victims, just as the lawyers who worked for Purdue Pharma and the other opioid manufacturers stonewalled the claims of that they were addictive. She's doing the same tactic. She's stonewalling in the name of legal ethics, regardless of what the damage might be to our public health, safety, welfare.
And so right, and this, I mean, this could have catastrophic consequences.
Indirectly, indirectly. If federal
Sure.
whistleblowers are not adequately protected, there can be very catastrophic consequences. And
Right,
she's
because
not
then people stop talking.
and she's not sounding the alarm that they're not adequately protected because she's protecting her client. Yes.
Yeah, okay. Right. So this could be catastrophic for sure. I mean, not her specific. Yeah, you're right. Indirectly, but it's still, if the mechanisms aren't there for people to say we got a serious problem here regarding the nukes, guys. Problem with the nukes.
Yeah. Or
Um,
VA healthcare scandals, or
anything,
bank
sure.
failures, or anything else where the federal
Right.
government agencies, airplane, you got it. Everything. Yes.
Everything. Everything. Sure. Okay. So what is it you're wanting to do? I mean, you've started this website. What is it you're looking to do?
Well, I just need to get a few members of Congress to say to Kathy Harris, are federal employees adequately protected from reprisal or not? Tell us. You have a duty to tell us.
Have no members of Congress taken this up?
No. Well, when they do, she stonewalls them too. And now she's up. Now she's up for. She wants the full Senate to confirm her as the permanent chairperson of the chairman of the Merits Protection Board. So we have a juncture here that for Congress or the Senate to say, Kathy Harris, you have a duty to report to Congress whether federal employees are adequately protected from reprisal. You and your predecessors haven't made the report now since 1979. What's the answer?
Since 1979.
Since the creation of the Merits Protection Board, yes.
So
And you can tell that. I mean, if I were wrong, where's the report?
Right.
They're not. Again, there's no report. So they haven't reported they are adequately protected. They haven't reported they're not. There's no report.
There's no report.
Right.
Okay, and this is why you say that this goes all the way to Joe Biden. Is that because he's wanting Kathy Harris to be the permanent head of the Merit System Protection Board?
Well, his primary statutory duty to the 2 million members of the federal workforce is to ensure federal agency employment is merit-based. Kathy Harris not sounding the alarm that it's not adequately protected, so he's not tasked then to take any action necessary. That's the law.
Yeah.
But if she doesn't sound the alarm, he doesn't. You know what I mean? He's
right.
not. He doesn't respond.
Right.
So that you see the breakdown.
So what
I'm telling him, since she won't report, Mr. President, I'm reporting.
Yeah.
Will you either tell Kathy Harris to do her job, or will you just start, comply with your duty, or fire me? Whatever. I'll be fine.
So what we need, or what you need, I should say, or what we need, because it really is for the American people, is somebody in the U.S. Senate, so a senator or a congressperson, to take this up and to point out this big, huge problem where government workers are not able to really adequately speak up because they're worried that they're not really fully protected.
Well, they won't be listened to, like me. Won't be. You're wasting your breath. You're putting yourself at risk for there's no plus side. You're just going to be ignored. And then you wonder why so many federal employees, they say they're so disengaged. Well, when you take an oath to, federal employees take an oath very identical, in fact, to members of Congress, very similar to the one taken by the president. And when you find out, that was really, you thought it'd be merit-based, fool you. And now you're kind of stuck. And a lot of federal employees are kind of disgusted by what they have to put up with to keep their jobs, and they become disengaged. So you want to talk about all the, there's another aspect to it too.
It seems like this would be something that Republicans in particular, maybe even, I mean, it's almost it's kind of, part of me says, well, a libertarian should want to take this up because a libertarian should want government to be, to shrink the government and make sure that it's efficient. But at the same time, this would be kind of increasing government, but with the intention, like you increase one part with the intention of shrinking other parts, because you'd want things to be effective, efficient, if we're going to be using taxpayer dollars. That's what I would think.
Well,
but
Kim, let's take a trip around the world, okay?
Yeah.
How many people, if you're an elite, do you want a trustworthy federal civil service in your country? Hell no. I want a corruptible one so I can use the federal government as a way for pelf, and I want people to hate their government, not even look at it as a tool for the common good. Okay? So there's an undercurrent. I'm not saying in America, but look around the world.
Yeah.
You want people want corruption, or the elites want corruption for two reasons. Enriches them, and they don't even want people to think the government could be anything but an enemy. Okay?
Right.
And how much are we finding that here in America? Hey, look, like it or not, we have nuclear power. We have the very complex society. It has to be regulated, like it or not. And if you want to come up with a better way to do it, I would say, well, one of the things that bothers me, my story would never have started if most engineers in the Department of Energy had to be licensed. Why is that? Because some of the people that are looking the other way at my disclosures or were engaged in reprisal against me, they were engineers. And if they were licensed professional engineers, I could have gone to their state board and saying, this engineer is betraying his or her duty. Not only are they not protecting public health and safety, they're trying to engage in reprisal against an engineer who is. How much more can you betray your profession? And if these engineers had been licensed, no, they would not have done this, okay? But who doesn't want engineers to be licensed in the federal government? The attorneys. They don't want the engineers to have that kind of professional autonomy. They want them to be able to say, like they've said to me, Kim, all right, hey, We got 3 rules of employment. It's the Department of Energy, Joe Carson. You should do just fine. But rule 1, if it's legal, it's ethical. Rule 2, if
Yeah.
we get away with it, it's legal. Rule 3, the only right you have, Carson, the right to seek employment elsewhere.
So
Nuclear
now I think
weapons
a
security is
Democrat
bad.
would be more likely to take this up just because because, yeah, you want to again, it's expanding government in order to ensure that government works better, but
Well,
it's risky because a lot of times that doesn't happen, but
I would say just change legal ethics. I'm not
sure, I
saying
mean, that
hire
could
more
also be
people.
done. Yeah, yeah. Um, while we got you, I mean, this is a so anyway, stop stonewalling mspb.com. That link is down below. That is to sign a petition to help bring this forward as well. So you're hoping to
Right.
get more attention to this so that this can actually there can be some sort of change, like even just changing the legal ethics or something that allows government workers who speak up when
Well,
whether like you said whether it be about nukes, which is an incredibly important thing, or banks or anything at all, just allow them the
right.
ability to speak up without
Well,
fear.
it's a little more narrowly focused. I'm trying to get in the executive branch, you have a lot of laws. And ultimately, by law, the Attorney General is the ultimate arbiter within the executive branch how laws to be interpreted. Civil service laws impact multiple agencies. I'm trying to get Kathy Harris to stop stonewalling just to ask the Attorney General, hey, Mr. Attorney General, are we interpreting this law properly? She won't do that because she knows the answer is no.
Right.
It's not like I'm asking her to get my attorney to look at it. The Attorney General. That's rule of law. So she's thumbing her nose at rule of law too, all to protect her client, and to protect her own interests too.
Right. Okay.
So I'm making a point, Tim. I'm not necessarily hiring more people. I'm just saying, can we, fix if I'm vindicated in my whistleblower disclosure, that could have then say a teachable moment about legal ethics and how did this. It's a legal ethics disaster. Let me tell
Yeah.
you about the Department of Energy sick workers. My whistleblowing played a role in the passage of a law 20 years ago. 20 years later, over 135,000 people have gotten $20 billion in compensation. Why? Because they were put in unsafe and unhealthy working conditions in the Department of Energy facilities in the Cold War without their knowledge, without adequate protection. That's an engineering disaster. But
Yeah.
it's also a legal ethics disaster because it's the lawyers who said, it's safe, it's safe, it's safe, and anyone who claims otherwise, we will try to run out. Okay? But we haven't
Right.
looked at that aspect of it. We have the third largest debit on the federal balance sheet is environmental cleanup costs. Yes, an engineering disaster, a legal ethics disaster because the lawyers protected all this wrongdoing for decades. Now we got a bill of 500 billion. No one's looking at that either. Okay, we're not really getting to the root cause. We got a real issue with the scope of legal ethics, at least as applied to federal agency or government agency attorneys who are supposed to be responsible to implement laws. No, they just say, I'm a hired gun. My client's never wrong. I will do whatever I can to protect my client.
Right.
The public be damned.
Yeah. That is the problem with attorneys. That is the problem with the legal field is that, I mean, on one hand, when you're being defended, you want an attorney that's
Right.
going to defend you to the teeth, right? But at the same time, this does cause a real problem when, yeah, this I could see that the main conflict there, that they're just there to protect their client, which is the department, and so whistleblower be damned, right?
Yep.
I mean,
You got
that's
it. And here
yeah.
we are. That's my message.
Uh, okay.
Nuclear weapons,
Um,
nuclear weapons, cyber safety. You're in our future, not just my little thing.
right,
Trying to blow the
right.
whistle myself because Kathy Harris will not.
I mean, this has just been, it's when we talk about whistleblowers, and a lot of times we get kind of like the big salacious stories, and there's just so many whistleblowers in the government and just in many fields, but who are trying to really change and help the government be more effective and
Mhm.
efficient and safer and not just be wasteful. I mean, that's one of the biggest problems with government is just like the endless spending and the waste, and they just turn a blind eye and they don't care, and it's all about making a bunch of money for contractors, and it's almost just like a money laundering scheme. And we want people like you who are actually going to speak up and say, but this isn't right, and so maybe we should make some changes here. And so I think this is such an important conversation, an important discussion. And what you're doing is very important to help, even with small things, from small to large. I mean, there's
Mhm.
got to be a protection for people. so that they feel like they can speak up and actually help. A lot of people wonder, why can't our government be more efficient and effective and less wasteful? Well, this would help,
This
right?
would
This would
help. Yeah.
absolutely help.
Yep.
Yeah, Joe, thank you so much for this conversation.